What are the thoughts though on the Israeli sides? I'm not sure if you're following the Israeli media, but especially now that Netanyahu is set to visit Trump this week already.
Yeah.
But the Israelis, they suffered a lot of destruction last time. I heard by some that they're planning to sit this one out and only join in if Iran is on its back foot, and it will be, I guess, a low-cost military adventure. Well, hoping that America can do this on its own. Uh, Again, one never knows. But what is the impression you're getting from Israel? Is this fears that it has to be done now before Iran can build itself too strong, or are there concerns that Israel is also not ready for this war? I often, to the credit of the Israelis, I often find that their media is at least more honest about
Yeah.
their
Yeah.
intentions than ours. But I was wondering how you see the Israeli view on this.
Well, the Israeli press is commenting that this is an urgent visit by Netanyahu. Now, I cannot rule out that this is not a visit to coordinate a military operation. And because the last time Netanyahu was just in D.C., so we're on the 9th, 41 days ago, on December 29th, when Bibi was in meeting with Trump. And there they were coordinating on that color revolution that was launched on the 28th. And I think at that time, my understanding was that it was anticipated to have the United States carry out an attack as the protests culminated in the effort to further destabilize and cause the collapse of the regime. Well, that plan didn't work out. Whatever the CIA and Mossad had promised, it didn't come to pass. So here's Bibi now for the second bite at the apple. Trump is under enormous pressure from the Zionist lobby, both from Israel and here in the United States. I mean, people like Sheldon Adelson's wife, Miriam Adelson, the donors. I wrote a piece at sonar21.com last night commenting on a recent article by Stephen Bryan. I know Stephen. I think he's a very decent person. He used to be the Undersecretary of Defense under Ronald Reagan back in 81 to 88. So, good Lord, 40 plus years ago. But he wrote a piece just trashing the talks that took place in Oman, just a blistering critique of Steve Witkoff and, calling for action, so that Trump's got to do something. So there is no support when I guess what I'm saying is when I see someone like Stephen Bryan adopt that position, he's not a Ben Gvir or a Smotrich. Those guys are crazy. They're fanatics. Stephen's not a fanatic. He's a Zionist, but he's usually does rational thought and analysis. He was all emotional. And if he's feeling that way, I guarantee you that same view is shared not just within the Jewish community, but within the Zionist community among Christians. And so with that kind of pressure coming to bear on Trump, the odds are he's going to cave. And what is so dangerous about it is we keep telling ourselves how great we are militarily. We're like the evil queen in Snow White, mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all? And the mirror's going, oh, you're the best. Nobody better than you. And yet we can't step back and objectively look at, okay, how did we do in Afghanistan after 21 years? How did we do in the Red Sea against the Houthis after more than a year, Operation Prosperity Guardian, and then succeeded by Rough Rider? We failed. And so without recognizing that we've entered an era where the U.S. military, that as it exists institutionally, it was designed for a particular period of time when technology was different. It's now changed. We're witnessing something as fundamentally different as took place from, say, the Spanish-American War and then World War I. So in Spanish-American War, you got Teddy Roosevelt riding up the hill on his horse. Horse cavalry was still important. But somewhere in that next 20 years, with the advent of tanks and machine guns in particular, horses were no longer really relevant. I mean, they were a liability more than an asset. So now look at what we're doing with aircraft carriers. We spend years building them, $15 billion or more, and all of a sudden they can be taken out by a $500,000 hypersonic missile. That China has them, Russia has them, Iran reportedly has them. So all of a sudden you can't use that aircraft. And then just before coming on your show, I was reading an article sent to me by one of my Air Force buddies that they're now the U.S. Think about this: the U.S. Navy has now created a jet, a combat jet, and a trainer that they will not allow it to land on a carrier. Okay, so they're developing a new jet technology, but it's not going to be carrier based. So you're going. So why do we have aircraft carriers? Particularly now, like we're seeing in the case with Iran, we have to keep them so far offshore that the weapons that they have normally that could be used if they were, say, 100 miles offshore are now basically useless because the distance is so great. And so with the advent of drones, I mean, just from a technology standpoint, when you realize those destroyers that are supposed to provide the air defense screen, they got 100 missiles. Normally, if they got an attack coming in, they'll fire 2 of those missiles, sometimes more, but let's go with just at least 2 to take out the one target. That's 50. You get 50 shots. And so imagine that you're flooding an aircraft carrier or that destroyer with 300 drones. That can be done. And you can't shoot them all down, and then they can attack and cause damage. And once the destroyer is out, has fired all those missiles, it has to sail to another port to get reloaded by a crane. They don't know. It's not a simple matter of just grabbing them off some other ship and stuffing them in the tube. So we've created this dysfunctional, highly technical, very advanced, and it's unworkable in a combat environment. And that's what these people aren't thinking through. And look at it with all of the advantages we had then on paper. I mean, say, let's go to Afghanistan. We had tanks, we had artillery, we had fixed wing aircraft, we had rotary wing, helicopters, we had mortars, we had overhead imagery. We're fighting a bunch of guys who are carrying rifles, basically. They got some mortars, they got some heavy machine guns, but they're not anywhere well equipped like we are. And we couldn't beat them after 21 years. We had to withdraw because we could not win that insurgency. So that's what I said. It's one thing to have the most expensive military in the world, but the capabilities, can it actually defeat an enemy or someone you've labeled as an enemy and then control the situation? And it's not just the United States. I mean, it's happened to Israel. Think of it from, here's Israel with a 300,000 man army. They have surrounded an area that's 5 miles wide and 25 miles long. They're fighting against a force that, again, is armed with sidearms and rifles. They're not armed with tanks and artillery and heavy equipment. And with all of that advantage that Israel has, because it's got them completely surrounded, I mean, it's not like they've got an easy way to resupply themselves. And yet Israel was unable, and still has been unable, to defeat Hamas and take actual control of the territory, which means you can walk the streets. You don't have to worry about getting ambushed. So that's where we got to get away from this Hollywood mentality of military prowess and recognize there are always limits to military power, which, as Clausewitz talked about, the military force is just one part of the politics of it. You've got to deal with the actual politics. So, and that's where I think the United States falls short. We refuse to deal with the actual politics of this. Instead, we indulge these fantasies.
Yeah. Well, just as a last question, that is, well, how do you see the other countries in the region reacting? Because as Iran has said, this would likely be a regional war. That is, they would strike at least the U.S. bases of the region, but they would also consider countries who join in on this to be, well, they should be held accountable. That is,
Yeah, well,
launching or refueling from their territory. I know Saudi Arabia said that, we're not going to permit it, just to make sure that they wouldn't be struck. Again, you don't know if they're actually going to follow through on this. But how do you see the rest of the region possibly joining in? And, before you mentioned Yerevan, or, you can also put Baku on that list. To what
yes,
extent
yeah.
do you think the U.S. could come down from the north? Because, Tehran is all the way up there near the Caspian Sea. It wouldn't surprise me if there would be some efforts of using, as at least Azerbaijan as a launching pad now that, Trump has brought peace to that region.
Yeah, no, in fact, I think that's how this war will spread. I fully anticipate that Armenia and Azerbaijan will be used as launching pads for attacks against Iran. Uh, Iran has held discussions with the Azeris, but this wouldn't be the first time that a government betrayed another government. But I think also Iran has contingency plans in place to take out the military targets in those. They're not big countries, so that's one advantage that Iran has. The other is Russia as well is providing intelligence support to Iran with respect to Armenia and Azerbaijan, because Putin and his government, they're not real happy with either of those two, because they recognize that the United States has embarked on a plan of subversion to turn those countries so that they can be used as springboards to attack Russia. So you're right that I think Saudi Arabia, Qatar, they're going to choose to sit this one out if they can. Iraq has already basically declared itself fully aligned and supporting Iran, which, what a remarkable accomplishment, because we go back, 40 years, and Iran and Iraq were enemies, killing each other. And again, they were doing so at the behest of the United States. And most people today don't recall that at least through the first 8 years of the, from 1980 to 1988, one of the biggest supporters of the Islamic Republic of Iran and helping them acquire weapons was Israel. So it was only after Saddam, went off the rails and was no longer considered a threat that Israel turned its attention and said, "Oh, we've got to now be worried about Iran as a potential nuclear threat." So, we always like to portray these things as the very simple, black and white. We know who the good guys are, we know who the bad guys are. No, it's a far more complex, nuanced situation, and unfortunately, the West has no clue about it. Absolutely no clue. We go with the cartoon version, the evil ayatollahs killing innocent children, while America the Beautiful is running around planting trees and opening flower shops. Couldn't be further from the truth.
Well, just as a final thought, that was something I mentioned at debate you referenced before as well. That is when the Chinese came in and began to seek to improve relations between Saudi Arabia, the other Gulf states, and Iran. What you heard from the former head of Mossad was, hey, listen, if the whole anti-Iranian coalition is going to fall apart, we should also explore our opportunity or possibility of making peace with Iran. We don't share a common border. We don't really have that many interests that has to be in collision. At least maybe it's time to start talking about how we can negotiate, what core interests of theirs we have to respect, what core interests of us they have to respect. At least start to talk. I mean, it baffles me that there's no efforts at all to at least explore the opportunity. I mean, I don't see why Iran would have to be this, diehard enemy. I think, as you said, this idea that it just runs in their blood, that they want to destroy America. I'm not sure where this comes from. I think, if anything, there's been efforts over the years which proves that at least the Iranians look towards the possibility or hoped that they could improve relations with the United States. And again, no country on the planet in its right mind wants to have a confrontational relationship with the US, which has the biggest army. So this is no, it's absurd to see how far this has gone.
Yeah,
The final thoughts before we wrap up.
Yeah, Iran and Israel once had good relations, and they can have good relations again, and that was under the Ayatollah Khomeini. So, it's well within this the scope. Part of this, though, goes to because Iran has been willing to support the Shia populations in Lebanon, in Syria, and in Israel, that for that reason, Israel wants to destroy Iran. And, that until the Zionist element is reined in, until they get to the point that they no longer believe that they are entitled by a deity. They claim that this deity has given them this specific land and given them permission to kill the people who are already there. I mean, that's, it's a racist mentality, but you can't ignore it. It's real because people act on those beliefs. And when you feel like you're entitled, you can do whatever you want to these Palestinians and to Shia. That's not going to get resolved easily. But the thing we have to remember about Iran is since the Ayatollah took over, the Khomeini took over in '79, Iran hasn't been going out with sending military adventurers out to attack other countries. They did provide military support to Bashar al-Assad against an Islamic insurgency that the U.S. actually was supporting. I mean, there's the other. We were supporting the very people who attacked us on 9/11. It doesn't make sense.
Well, Larry, thank you as always for taking the time. I know you're in high demand, and as always, I will leave a link to Sonar 21 in the description, and I highly recommend for all the listeners to check out your articles there. As well, at least that's what I do. So thank you again.
Well, thank you for what you do because your program provides really a wide variety of information that if people just take time to watch, they'll be better informed, much better than mainstream media. I'll say that.
Doesn't take much these days, sadly. Thanks.
All right. Bye-bye.